First off, hello everyone. We are kind of doing this a little different today. I'm glad technology is working with us so far. So, Erin's with us on Zoom, and I am here in person. So, can we say hi, Erin? All right, that's how we get us started. All right, so my name is Jennifer Tackett. I am an art therapist. I graduated from Wayne State in '08 and have practiced here in Michigan for the last, I think I've been back 10 years. I've practiced in Texas as well as in Arkansas. So Erin and I wanted to kind of share with you guys kind of the ethics behind a program that we ran that kind of expanded on itself in starting in October. Okay, so do you want to go to the next slide? Erin?
I moved to the how it began.
Okay.
I also want to just introduce myself really quick. I am Erin Simonetti, and I'm an oncology art therapist at Carmanos in Flint. And Jen and I actually have been circling around each other up here, but never officially met until this tragedy that happened in Grand Blanc kind of brought us together, and we started teaming together. And we've actually been kind of working together quite a bit on projects since. Um, do you want to share any more about your background at all before we get
Yeah,
going?
so I have kind of done a variety of populations. My thesis work was in mental health and recovery work. Worked at Common Ground, went to Meridian Health Services, and now I'm working with traumatic brain injury survivors at Care First Rehabilitation. I've been there about 2 years. So just kind of a variety of different populations. I worked at FAR Therapeutic Arts and Recreation too, with kids and adults with developmental and cognitive disabilities. So you want to share your stuff?
Also, so when the church shooting that happened in Grand Blanc, that's kind of what brought us together. And we both just felt this desperate need of wanting to do something and not right away knowing exactly what, but that is what brought us together. So I'll move on to the next slide.
Okay, so we kind of wanted to go over and bring an ethics element into not only just sharing kind of what program Erin and I put together, but the ethics behind it. Because with it being spawned from a tragedy that happened in Grand Blanc, we really wanted to consider that ethical decision making because of who was going to be involved. Okay. There are three art therapists that live in Grand Blanc. Erin and I are two of them. We wanted to kind of make sure that we provided, making sure that we connected with ourselves as well as connected to what the community needed. And we felt that was a responsibility to really have that discussion while working through the plans of everything that kind of opened up from this event, the original thing. Okay. And then kind of think about lessons that we kind of learned from that for future community outreach for different things that may happen, because our world is our world these days. So we don't know what's going to happen, and being able to apply, making sure that we have applied our skill set and thinking about the impacts within ourselves, because we were a part of the community that it impacted, but also to the community needs. Okay, I'll go
Yep.
next slide.
So we're going to go over a little bit of the timeline and order of events of some of these projects, so you can see how we kind of problem solved and came together with some of these challenges and other surprises that we came up with. So it all began on September 28th of last year. There was a tragic mass shooting at a local church in Grand Blanc, and this really touched a lot of us in the community, whether we were involved within the community that was directly affected, or if we just lived nearby. It really hit home. And so we felt this desperate need to want to support, but not knowing exactly what that would look like. At first, I had started thinking about Stars of Hope, which is an organization that tends to respond to crisis and has been doing that for a long time. But the only problem is they typically need an organization to tie up with. And with this situation, we didn't have an organization, but we wanted to do something. So we still went along with the idea of what the stars symbolize, but we decided to just create something of our own. And this is where Jen and I met and we started brainstorming together ideas and how we could make this work. And so part of it involved networking. We were looking for local community resources that were willing to provide a location where we could hold this event. And after, connecting with different people, R&B Used Books is a local bookstore in our area, and they offered up their space. And so we decided that we were going to use their parking lot because we wanted to have somewhat of a larger event. So that was able to, and it's kind of central to Grand Blanc area. Another thing was we didn't have a grant. We didn't have like funds stacked up. So we were trying to figure out how can we make this happen with no funds gathered.
Mhm.
So one idea was for art supplies. What can we do? So we created an Amazon wish list and we shared on social media and with friends and family of what we were needing to provide this event. And we had an overwhelming response. I mean, I think very quickly we had all of our supplies covered, which was really amazing. And then it shipped to the address that we provided, which I think was one of our houses.
Yep.
Also had to get permission from the city to make sure, because this was a community event, we wanted to make sure we were checking all the boxes and this was an appropriate thing to be doing and that we weren't misstepping anywhere. And once we kind of had the basis and a date figured out, we shared it on social media. And we're trying to get the word out there so that people knew about it in our community. We were not just trying to touch those that were directly affected, but also just our community as a whole, because we all were feeling a loss and a sense of not having control. And we wanted to provide an opportunity to bring people together. We also had reached out to friends and family, other fellow art therapists, asking if anyone wanted to volunteer their time. And honestly, we had so many volunteers. We had almost too many volunteers, which is a wonderful problem, but it goes to show of how many people just wanted to contribute in any way they could, whether it was providing tables, chairs, helping pay for the supplies, volunteering their time of the day of the event. I mean, all of the above. It really kind of came together. And I want to remind you that this was like a quick response timeline turnaround from September 28th to the event ended up being on October 12th. So we really were kind of like trying to figure out all these details in a really quick manner. And I'll explain more about the actual event on the next slide. And I'll pass the torch to Jen to explain the rest.
All right. So, with the conclusion of the event, a lot of community members kind of reached out. One of the local middle schools, this happened around January, had called me and reached, knowing that I was an art therapist and knowing the event that was coordinated with Aaron. Wanted to kind of get some more support due to some other losses that this specific middle school experienced. So not only was the mass shooting and church fire a component of it, they also, in the beginning of November, their football coach, 7th grade and 8th grade football coach, was killed in Alma, which is right outside of Grand Blanc, by a fellow coworker. And they also lost a teacher that had worked at the school for 26 years. So 3 things really impacted not only their students, but also their teachers. So wanted to know if we could come in and provide workshops for the students and teachers as an outlet, as a way to start to begin to heal and process. So that started, like I said, reach out in January, or actually reached out November, and then we started these workshops January through March. I reached out to Aaron, and Aaron originally, I will kind of get more in details on the workshops. Then once the event with the stars happened, we also found kind of a We gave out sets of 3 of the stars that were made at the Painting Hope event to different places in the community. And I think 3 of the local high schools got stars, but we kind of felt like we wanted to do more, which kind of will lead into another event that we did in May, where I coordinated with the local art teachers, and they were able to bring more stars in for all the fourth and fifth graders to make stars within the schools. So it kind of grew from the original event to connecting to more community members. So that happened in May. So we can kind of go in the next slide and go in more detail.
Yeah. So as Jen was saying, we with the Painting Hope event, our whole purpose was not only to bring people together to create the stars and try to send message of hope within the community, basically just recognizing that we are a unit here. We do see this happening. And the grief and stuff is not being overlooked. And we just wanted people to feel seen and heard. So the goal of the stars wasn't just creating and bringing people together, but it was also that we were going to display them around the community. So when you're going to the grocery store, you see a star. When you go to the gym, you see a star. When you go to the library, you see a star. And just to remind people that like we are here together,
Mhm.
and people are thinking of us as a whole. So we did have people pre-register for the event. We kind of had these shifts of people coming through. And I think we had about 25 people per shift. And I think we had 4 shifts, if I remember correctly. I used an app that I use for work as well called Calendly. And I use it to help with the registration. And what I like about that too is you can add additional information about what to expect coming into an event. We had a bunch of volunteers helping that day, which was really wonderful. And then we planned most of the events on our shared note. So that as we were going into this event, we had a shared note on our iPhones to kind of just see in the moment what we were doing, what needed to be done, and so on, so that we weren't constantly have to reach out to each other and say, "Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that." We just kind of check in here and there to follow up, but we knew in there this checklist of what needed to get done, how, and we just delegated, whether it was with the volunteers or amongst ourselves. And that really led up all the way into the day of. What was a really nice surprise is we even had local emotional support dogs that came by. Their owners volunteered their time and they had multiple people just spontaneously come, which was a really nice bonus. We provided snacks and some coffee and water. And then we also encouraged people to go into the bookstore who had volunteered their space to kind of just be part of the community and just see what other resources were available. And then we also provided some resources. Not only did members that were part of the church that were even there were some people that came that were part of the event, that the tragedy that had happened. But then we also had members in the community and surrounding communities that came to partake and to just kind of come together. And the whole purpose was never to dive into trauma or dive into the topic even as a whole. It was more about bringing people together, recognizing that they're not alone, adding the creativity, and providing support.
Mhm.
We had amazing feedback about the stars. And then I also had an anonymous survey that when people sign up for Calendly, that they can fill out this form afterwards so I can get feedback about their experience, which was all very positive. And by the end of it, we had 135 stars created, which we distributed to first responders and then around the community. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it to the table and Jen's going to help me because unfortunately I can't see you all today. So Jen's going to have to sit here and
Yep.
call, but I can hear you. So that's the important part. Um, I have an ethical question for the group and I really encourage participation. How do we help others while we are also grieving ourselves?
Does anybody have? So how it's an ethical question that we had to think about was when putting this event together, we're also a part of the community. So, we weren't making sure that we were not putting just ourselves in mind, but also to the overall community needs. So asking yourself that. How would you support yourself while also maybe planning a bigger event to help support others in their grief? Julie?
I was just going to say by honoring your grief by creating sacred space.
Yep. Yep.
Yourself and checking in with yourself so you're not counter transferring.
Yep. Correct. Were you able to hear her?
Did. Yep.
Okay, good. Yes. So making sure to create, giving yourself that chance to be able to start processing and giving a safe space and checking in, because Erin and I, we checked in with each other quite a bit through this whole process. Yep. Anyone else? How would you make sure that you were honoring yourself in that grief process while planning a bigger event for the community? Go ahead.
Make stars for yourselves.
We did. Yep.
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 Yep. We put them in our, I've had one on my tree and right in front of my house.
Yep. So just making sure because again, we were participants, right? But we also want to make sure that they had that safe space was a big common theme through the whole thing. Not, creating that safe space for them to start working through that, as well as creating that connection, making sure that people felt that they weren't alone in this process, and giving them more resources, right? That they could have this creative space to be able to start, getting that release, that grieving release, but also to where they can continue that journey, because we're only going to be with them for a short period of time. Okay. All right. So, we're also part of that narrative. So looking at making sure that we're attending to both our needs as well as the community needs. Do you want to go to the next slide, Erin?
Yep.
We kind of went over a little bit of this. All right. So some of the ethical decisions we really had to think about was, again, checking in with each other, making sure, because again, Erin and I both work. I work full-time as an art therapist. I'm a mom. Erin works as an art therapist. She's a mom of a young one. So we need to meet it like, do we have the emotional capacity, physical capacity to be able to put this event together? What can we bring to this event? So just kind of checking in with each other to make sure that we were okay. Taking those mental breaks and allowing ourselves for that. Delegating. So utilizing the resources, like the shared notes on iPhones for those iPhone users. That was really, really helpful to be able to make sure that, so Beth, who was the owner of the R&B Used Bookstore, she took on some of the tasks. We were able to create a group for the volunteers so we could check in with them. So utilizing some of those technological advances and resources, making sure that we all stay connected to make sure everybody else was connected. The Amazon wish list, that really helped, because again, we wanted to create the safe space and we wanted to create this event, but we didn't have a grant or anything to do so. So creating that so people could help out with the ways that they could help out, right? So they may not have been open on October 12th to be able to come, but they could send some markers or send some supplies to kind of help support it. Consulting with each other, making sure that we, we're talking to other art therapists, talking to each other, talking to community members, reaching out to make sure that it was okay for us to hold the event. Connecting with folks in the community to make sure that they were welcoming the event. Giving ourselves the right to say no. Looking at that countertransference. Am I putting this event together for me, or am I doing this for the community? And making sure that we kind of checked in with each other to make sure that we're going into it with that mindset. And again, connecting back to what we have been trained to do, and connecting back to our professional training together. Okay. You want to go to the next slide?
Yep. So now we're going to go into the art response that we did for the West Middle School. Jen did touch on some of what, led to us starting to work there. So their principal had reached out to us because they got a grant to help support their students and their staff who were going through unimaginable grief. They had the church shooting that had happened, which some families, including the teachers, were affected. They had a teacher who passed away from cancer, and they lost their football coach to gun violence very suddenly. And all of this happened in a 3-month span. So it was one thing after another. And what's that message? That they don't feel safe. So they got a grant to help support their students and teachers. And again, our focus was to hold space, to provide connection, and to provide resources. We were not trying to dive into trauma or anything like that because we didn't have the bandwidth in this setting to do so. But we still wanted people to feel seen and to kind of touch on different perspectives and topics that might support them. Originally, Jen was going to work with the teachers and I was going to work with the students. And then when we met with the principal, we realized what their goals were. They really wanted to address the students that were affected by losing their coach to a tragic gun violence. And then they wanted to focus with the teachers more about losing a friend and a colleague to cancer. And given my background in oncology, it made more sense that I would approach the teachers and that Jen would work with the students. So we kind of adjusted as we went to best meet the needs of what they were looking for. And so I feel like with a lot of what we did together, we were always kind of, we might start with a plan and we had to really transition a lot and pivot depending on what the needs were.
Just kind of being flexible in that approach. Erin, we're having her specialty be in oncology. The teachers could possibly continue their healing process with her, with having her as a local resource in the community. Where I have a student at West Middle School, and I had previous experience working at FAR with adolescents. So we just, again, being flexible to pivot to meet the needs of where they were at. Okay, so with the students, we did a workshop once a month, so January, February, and March. So I met with the football players for 2 hours each month. And then I met with some of the students that were identified as kind of struggling with either the church fire or shooting from the principal and the social worker in the school. And the effects from the loss of the teacher. So that the student may have worked with the teacher, and had a unique relationship. So the principal really helped to identify which students she felt really needed those services, and guided them in that direction. Some of the things that I really wanted to focus on was, again, making sure that they didn't feel alone in their grief. And then also giving them the coping tools to be able to work through that process, and then continuing on with those resources, providing that safe space for them to be able to start processing, what they were going through. Okay, do you want to go to the next slide, Erin?
Yep.
So I'll go into a little bit more depth. So with the football team, one of the coaches that was with the football, like the assistant coach, was with their football players through this whole process. So he attended the sessions and did the projects and the experientials right along with them. So the first month one of the experientials we did was emotional graffiti. So I had the clients, of course, create name tags, of course, to introduce themselves, and then had them write on there and identify a strength that they brought with them as being part of the team. Okay, so I really wanted to kind of focus on starting out with like a strong foundation as something to build from. So gave them some different graffiti type style, and we were able to take that strength word, the thing that they brought to the team, and do it in graffiti style lettering, and then use some the transfer paper to put it on a big canvas. So you can kind of see here in the center is the end product. Here, right here is them working on it. And then we kind of started out with that strong foundation of strength, and then also identified feelings of grief that they were experiencing as well. Those two feeling words went on to that canvas. And then throughout the February and March, we were allowed them that safe space to be able to go add color and finish out the piece. In February, we did memory boxes. Also created some bracelets with strength stones because I wanted something to give them concrete that they could touch, feel, that they could put their grief into. So we did strength stones that were in the color of Grand Blanc's school colors. So we did red jasper, lava stone, and I can't remember what the other one is at the moment. And they really enjoyed working on that together. The last session we did with the football team was with, I had connections to a previous job with the NFL for the Detroit Lions, and Herman Moore was able to connect with him, and he came in and actually talked to the football team and talked about the importance of not only taking care of yourself physically, but also mentally as well. And then we also at the end created vision boards. So I wanted to kind of do past, present, future, and working through that. With the students with the that were impacted by the loss of the teacher, again, I really focused on coping skills and introduced altered books and ways that you could do entries in the altered book. So we did visual journaling. We did the first, just to kind of give them the materials to start an altered book. And then when they came in for February and March, I told them they could, add entries to their altered book on their own time. Each time they came back, they were able to share some different entries that they put in there. We did scribble drawings as an entry. We did blackout poetry as an entry, and then a vision board entry as well for those students. Okay. Erin?
So the workshops that I did with the teachers is I broke out sessions during their prep hours. And I broke it up into multiple half days. And I did 2 main workshops with them. So the first one we did is I focused on giving the teachers tools to help cope, not only just using the art as a way to provide perspective, but also different somatic exercises and different ways that they can release emotion that they could also share with their students too. So I started off with giving everyone a little card piece of paper, and we did a round robin exercise. And I used creative cultivation cards that was created by Taylor Beardsall. She's a fellow art therapist. Some of you might have actually just seen her in one of the previous discussions. And what's really cool about these cards is it's like a deck of cards, and you can have someone pull up a card and it will give a directive. It could say, use the color yellow. Or it will say, draw something that reminds you of nature. Okay. So what I did is everyone had their cards in front of them. I'd have the person to my right pull a card and it would have a directive. We would all do it. Then I said, everyone pass your card. And then I would repeat that until everyone ended up having their card back in front of them. And we talked about what was it like to, because I didn't warn them that they were going to be passing their card. What was that like to kind of give that up? And also, we talked about the details of it, particularly about how everyone's card turned out differently. Every card turned out differently, but everyone had the same directive. And that just goes to show that in life, in experiences, we all perceive things and experience things differently. And the way we cope is differently. And we're not here to say that one way is good, one way is bad. It's more about learning yourself, what works for you, and then finding ways to move forward. And then that kind of went into the coping skills that I hand them. So they basically went away with this whole deck of cards of coping skills and then the exercise to remind them. And a common theme that I noticed that came up is that the staff would say that they didn't feel like they were allowed to grieve. They felt like those that really knew the teacher better than them were allowed to have opinions or be grieving, but that they weren't allowed to. And there was kind of almost like this hierarchy that was kind of this undertone that was going on. And so just providing that space that like everyone's allowed to have their emotions of whatever they're experiencing, I felt like was really useful. The other workshop that I did is we made sun catchers. I'm a big fan of these for using them for various purposes. My thought with the teachers was that I wanted them to take something home that would continue the conversation. They could use these to remember the teacher that they lost, or even if they were part of the church shooting or were affected just by the community stuff, to be able to either set an intention, hope for the future, or remember something from the past. And every time that they see it hanging, it'll remind them of that. So they had a little tag that went on it, and they could use it for whichever purpose. And then we went around and talked about what they chose to honor and what their thoughts were on the project. So this brings me to another ethical question, and we'll be able to select only one person for this just because we're a little behind. So, and Jen, I'm sorry, this is actually your.
Yep. So, following a community crisis, what questions could you ask yourself in order to gain a deeper understanding of what the community's needs? What are you guys' thoughts?
What is missing now that this person is not here, or that this activity or this loss, and what is not available to the school that you think after? What is needed now, and what are you feeling?
Okay, so attending to those things that are missing since the loss. What is something that I could provide that within your skill set, right, to be able to fill that missing link. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I think asking yourself what individuals went through who are experienced, like, as we say, put yourself in their shoes.
Yep, put yourself in their shoes.
I think sometimes it's easier to be where they're at.
Absolutely. So putting yourselves like in their shoes to be able to identify, to meet. Again, we're taught we need to meet the clients where they're at. So on the larger scale, we need to meet the community where they're at, and what's missing, and what are those needs. Okay.
Yep.
Good thoughts.
So here are some of the questions that we asked. We asked, what is the community, or what is the school asking for? We weren't trying to make assumptions. We really were trying to ask or listen to what they were asking. What gaps are there? What role should art therapy fill? What are our professional limitations? And what are our personal limitations? A big thing that Jen and I kept coming back to is, just because you wanted to do something does not always mean that you should. Because even in our personal lives, we have our own personal stuff going on at home. We have stuff that's going on in the community. We have our jobs. We have all these things. Sometimes it sounds great to want to do something, and you just want to give or be there for something or an opportunity and so on. But if you are stretching your bandwidth, the question is, should you be taking on this responsibility? So, and we kept kind of checking in sometimes, where our limitations were, and they kind of ebbed and flowed, and we would talk about it and try to figure out where we were at. So that was definitely something that I think it wasn't just about professional limitations, but also our personal ones.
All right, so kind of what we were kind of intentionally looking into, again, we kept going back to the theme that we wanted to create that safe space. We wanted to create connection and hope. We wanted to not, again, with trauma, you don't want to open up Pandora's box without giving them the resources to be able to support them through that, right? So the goal wasn't really even we wanted to be trauma informed in that sense. Because again, with the first event, we were going to only be with them for an hour that they signed up for. With the kids and the teachers, we were only going to be with them 2 hours for the football players once a month. She was going to be with the teachers for an hour when they dropped in, right? So it was going to be a very, very short period of time. So, and then also making sure that we connected with the community too. We reached out to, counseling agencies that I knew in Grand Blanc that would be open to people reaching out if they needed that extra support, and creating a list that everyone took with them when they left. Because again, we didn't want to We wanted to provide that support, that safe space for them to start that process, but give them something that they could do to kind of continue that process on. Okay.
Yep. And I just want to add to the graphics here that are on this slide are different graphics that both Jen and I made to either promote the event on social media, flyers that we distributed around that people could use to register, and also the letter that we included when we gave businesses and everything, the stars we included, because sometimes we'd walk into a business and I didn't have the manager there in front of me that I could explain all this stuff. So we wanted to include a letter so that way if we hand it to one of their staff members, the message still got passed along about what these are for and so on. So another ethical question that we have is, how do we protect participants while working within the larger community? What do you need to consider?
Any thoughts on what you, I mean, when a traumatic event happens, that's not only affecting you, but the larger community, and you want to create an event, what do you have to consider?
Well, like, even though we're processing it, like making sure that the art doesn't trigger somebody going into like a grocery store
Right.
or a coffee shop.
Right. Yes. So again, the message is coming out from that art. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Media. Yep. Yep. They're hitting the nail on the head. Anything else to consider?
I mean, I like that you said that you guys provided a list of where they could go after for extra support. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
To have that.
That continued journey.
Yeah.
If they needed it. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Okay. You want to go to the next one?
Yep.
All right. Media. Right on the money. Right. So when we did the original event, sharing it on social media, we also shared it, and we made connections. The impact was really felt, and it grew. Not only did it connect with the original event to the middle school, to involving, Herman Moore and the Detroit Lions, and then we went even farther with the kids making stars within their school in the classroom setting. And then there's a media story that was covered. After that, so really media coverage was something that needed to be considered. I know with Herman Moore's team, one of the things that they wanted to do a press release about him coming to visit the students before the event was going to happen, right? And I really had to coordinate with the principal as well as Herman Moore's team, kind of be the mediator between, because we wanted to make sure, yes, Herman wants to come help these students, but he also is promoting himself and making sure that he's known, right? But I wanted to make sure, again, it was a safe place for the students, right, to have this discussion about where they're at, because they lost their football coach. It wasn't just for the media to come in and cover it. So had to work and coordinate with his team to be able to do a press release after, and still being allowed that media to come in and cover it, but also to make sure that the message from Herman and the media coming in while the kids worked on the stars was making sure that the event was for them, not the media. Okay. Making sure consent was in there, opportunity, because again, we want to, as art therapists, we're taught to advocate, communicate, network, promote our field, be able to let people know what art therapy is all about. But again, you got to find that balance between getting art therapy out there, but also making sure that it's not going to be hurtful for who you're working with. Okay.
Yep. So another thing that we really had to consider were things like making sure that those were helping the volunteers and community support were on the same page as us. We wanted to make sure that they weren't trying to like ask people about their experience or bring up anything that we weren't really trying to do as a whole altogether. So just having that continuity amongst not just us as the art therapists, but anyone that was contributing to the experience. And then back to, we wanted to provide those resources. So this is an example of the handout that we gave. We weren't just looking up resources in the area and wanting to like fill these boxes. It was really important to us that we only put resources that we knew that it was a good place to refer, or that we knew someone that we were referring to, because we know that there can be holes in the system and that sometimes it's very complicated. So we wanted to make sure we were giving out good resources to the participants, and so that they knew where they could go following for support. And some of the main lessons that we learned during this experience was that, one, healing does not always require to process trauma. And sometimes that the presence and holding space is enough. That goes, I mean, that's huge, especially with grief and trauma. Self-care is an ethical responsibility. Hope can be a therapeutic intervention. And collaboration strengthens ethical practice. It's huge. I think if I would have taken on this project by myself as an art therapist and didn't seek the support, especially when Jen offered to help, and same with vice versa, when she took on when the schools reached out to her and then she reached back out to me, it would have been a lot more difficult. Yeah, it would have been too much for either of us to carry. But because we were supporting, it was so heavy with the two of us, doing it. But it was the ethical decision to make.
All right, so we want to kind of share some pictures of how the event kind of, I mean, we're almost at a year anniversary of the church fire and shooting. And we're still talking about it, and the impact's still being felt. So some of these pictures, after the event happens, Senator Cherry is our Grand Blanc's area, Flint area's representative. His staff reached out about the Painting Hope original event and wanted to connect, and we were able to present stars to him and his staffers. That staffer was able to connect us to the governor. So the governor invited us to be able to present stars to her. Also, too, we were able to provide stars to the first responders, to the people that came to help at the very beginning of the event. And that message, with being able to give those 3 stars out to community members, that can still be felt as you go walk through Grand Blanc. There's still Grand Blanc strong signs everywhere in Grand Blanc. You can't go anywhere without seeing one. Or the school came out, was Grand Blanc strong, we're better together, was one. There's one pulling out of my neighborhood this morning driving here. So it really opened up, Grand Blanc strong opened up. It was covered nationwide, right? But we wanted to make sure that we provided, again, that folks didn't feel alone, provided some creative coping skills that they could kind of help and gravitate towards to start beginning that process, as well as resources, again, to be able to continue that journey on. Okay.
And I just want to add too, we had, it was really important for us to have stars at the scene.
Yes.
And we had originally kind of adhered them to the fence that was that encapsulated the area after the event. And a lot of them actually blew away through storms and so on. And so we had to go back, and Jen was awesome. And then she put them on sticks and staked them in. So we had to kind of problem solve with that too. But it was really important for it to be everywhere, including there.
Yep.
So some of our practical takeaways is start with listening what the needs are. This is a reminder that this is something that we kind of came up out of nowhere, and it's kind of snowballed into different things, but it's not like this was part of our original jobs or that we had funding behind or all this stuff. These are kind of some things that really came up, but it had a strong presence, and it all started by listening. Know your role. what our limitations are, what our strengths are, and where we can move forward. Lean on colleagues and our resources, volunteers. Protect yourself. Know what your personal limitations are, what you feel comfortable with, what you don't feel comfortable with, not what you think you should be doing.
Mhm.
Protect the participants. That's always been a key as an art therapist, as you all know. But when circumstances are evolving and changing, you always got to keep coming back to that. Is this going to be protecting our participants? And stay flexible. There's plenty of times that we had to pivot, figure out what we were doing, many conversations, and each time it ended up working out. So
Mhm.
I think those are some really big takeaways from that experience.
All right, so last final question. If a tragedy occurred in your community next week, what are the ethical questions you would ask yourself before beginning? Say a little bit louder. Am I ready to help others?
Mm.
Go ahead. Who does this affect? Anyone else? What would you ask yourself? Thinking of the ethics behind it. How can I help? Yes. Yeah. Am I personally able to invest the time that is needed to put it together and to follow through and emotionally be there for what the community needs? Yeah.
Who can help me make things possible?
Who could help me make things possible, right? Because again, there is, I think Amber alluded to it, the 3 degrees of separation. I may know someone who knows someone who knows someone. To get to Herman Moore, and I didn't think that he would actually come and visit the students. I just asked him maybe he could do a cameo video, and he was like, "No, I'm coming to see them." And I was like, "What?" And so same thing with Senator John Cherry. And meeting with him. And he was like, okay, talking to him and having that conversation. Well, how can we get some of these stars to the governor? Right. And then even presenting the stars to the governor and talking about the art therapy bill, right? And art therapy stuff. So again, you never know, you know what I mean, by talking and connecting and planning how far these things can reach and the impacts it can have.
Yeah. And the networking without the networking, none of this would have happened. Jen and I wouldn't have connected. We wouldn't have gotten financial support from the community who helped paid for the art supplies, donated tables and chairs. Like networking was literally everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, even working in the schools with the last event, we had to coordinate with art teachers because I wanted to do more, and I think Erin wanted to do more, and we had to ask her something like, I don't have the bandwidth or the emotional time or the physical time to be able to do more stars, but we want to have this more spread and impact more people. So coordinating with the art teachers, they took on the actual, I put together art kits for each school, and the art teachers took on and they did it with the kids. I think we were up to 522 stars at the end. After the original event, and then also in the schools. And then Erica Francis came out, and when we did some of the stars in the schools, did a little presentation on that too. So again, we had to make sure that was safe too, a safe space to be able to create those stars, and make an impact as well. So, and advocate. Okay. Any other questions you would ask yourself? Or any questions in general? Yes.
As far as after they were made, I'm kind of curious
Mhm.
what the feedback might have been if somebody's star was distributed somewhere else and they saw it in the community, or it was given to the governor, or their star blew away. Like,
Right.
I'm kind of curious how people felt turning in their star
Yes.
and then having it distributed
Mhm.
you chose where the stars went. They didn't get to choose.
Exactly. And we were open about that at the event, because that's one of the things that we didn't do this in the schools, but the original event, they got a big star that they could paint, and then we made little stars that were magnets that they could take home. So that way they could leave that impact in the community, but also have a little memento to take home with them as well. So that kind of covered that. I know that, I don't know if.
I did
Can we
do
go
a,
back to the slide with the impact, Aaron, with the governor.
yes.
So my daughter is this one right here, the little one that looks like exactly like me. She really did not like putting a 6, 7 star, right? But my I did stars with even my, I think Aaron, you did stars with your family too, didn't you?
Yep. And I did them at my work.
Yep, and I did that in my work as well. So my nephew did the 6, 7 star. He was very, very, very excited that it was down here. But looking at and being able to walk around the community and say, I hate, you know what I mean? And be able to connect to that. And also the message of hope, right? That even from a tragedy, there is still hope and there is still connection. And it affected a lot of people. So being able to give that symbol of hope out there was really important. So
And I do want to add a note to that is that
Yeah.
I did, because we did, when people registered, they had to enter an email. So I did reach out to people after asking if there was any particular places that they wanted stars to be displayed at. There was too many stars and too much going on to be able to communicate who stars went where and so on, because people didn't put their names on their stars. So it wasn't like I could track and help people understand. But we did create a Facebook group and kind of posted pictures on there of where they ended up. So in hopes that people would find out where theirs went.
which I need to add on to more. Yeah. So and we promoted that too. That way we could, so they could find out where their stars went. You know what I mean? Kind of a star scavenger hunt. So it's kind of really expanded. So, any other questions, comments,
I
thoughts?
was just thinking in my head,
Uh-huh.
the idea of them giving their stars back to you after they finished it,
Mm-hmm.
and a conversation about like temporariness.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that this was already something that happened to them. I mean,
Yeah.
People don't last forever. Things don't last forever, but that also happens with emotion. You feel this way now.
Yeah.
But as we work together as a community, it can be something that we work through and we're able to
Mm-hmm.
move on.
Yeah,
Well, not
the
exactly
temporary.
move on from, but find comfort in each other.
Exactly. Yep. Did you hear that, Aaron?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Absolutely. So having that conversation, I think it opens up a lot of conversations that we don't, as grief. Do we talk about grief? No, right? And so having it as a large event and the impact of the loss was felt, we also wanted to create that safe space for that hope to be felt too. And I think we met that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments? Well, we put our information on there too. There's more handouts if you guys didn't get a handout. Feel free to reach out to Aaron and I if you have questions about the event or, something, if you want to, play in a community event, and whether it's based on something in depth or based on something of wanting to make a difference in your community.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Aaron from Grand Blanc.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Talk soon.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Bye.